We're going to introduce Dr. Marlisa Hurt. Marlisa has a PhD in longevity medicine. She is a formulator in the product industry. I have used many of her product formulations. One of my favorite is amazing magnesium that crosses the blood-brain barrier. She has a zinc nasal spray that kills anything on contact. So anything that you can think of that might be in the nasal passages that you don't want in your nasal passages, you want this nasal spray. And so many other products I can't even. We'll be here all night if we start listing all the products that Dr. Marlisa has formulated. She is absolutely amazing. Marlisa, also just the kindest person I know. So smart. Marlisa, thank you for organizing this tonight and doing this for us to teach us more about the benefits of this fish oil. I've been talking to people all day. They're so excited. The omega ratios here in the US are so skewed because of our diet, right? Our seed oils, our everyone going to Chick-fil-A and McDonald's and all the things that they do. And even the people who eat incredibly clean, they are still finding that their omega ratios are vastly skewed. So I'm going to turn it over. I think Kim, you have some questions for Marlisa, or Marlisa, do you want to do a little bit of an intro, whatever works best?
I think I'm going to pass it over to Kim because
Okay.
we talked for a while the other day, and she has some questions, I think, to kind of keep us the ball rolling in the right direction to help me stay focused. But thank you for that beautiful introduction. And you know that you're my favorite. So anytime you invite me to do anything, I'm always like, of course. So anyway, so glad to be here with you all tonight. And I believe what we're going to talk about is cell membrane health, why people can't lose weight when they're trying really hard, and all the things, all the things that contribute. So anyway, I'm going to pass it over to Kim and let you start the ball rolling in a way that makes sense rather than me just kind of spitballing all over the place.
Thank you for being on. I actually just met Dr. Marlisa a few weeks ago, and I feel like I've known her my whole life. To say that I'm grateful for her time and presence on this Zoom tonight is an understatement. She's an incredibly important and busy woman. So, with that being said, it started out a few weeks ago, just with my own personal sort of story, but also um, there's quite a few of us on peptides. And so that will be a piece of it. I know some of you it might not be relevant to, but that is a piece that we will be discussing tonight on why it's important, not even just peptides, but probably any supplement that you're taking and why this actually matters. But I did just a little bit, I took some notes. So I want to read from my notes because I really want to stay in line. And I'm still very much learning on this journey. But after about 8 hours of total time on Zoom with Marlisa, and learning about, I think Jen can relate, the oil, this particular balance oil from Zinzino. I wanted it yesterday or last week, like the first day that we spoke about it. Jen and I kept saying, "How do we get this oil? How do we get this oil?" And now we finally found out how we get this oil, and I have the kit in my home right now, which I'm so excited to take the blood spot test that she's going to talk about tonight, and why this is so key. But this balance oil I've learned is not just another, it's not another supplement. It corrects a biological imbalance that affects inflammation, hormones, brain function, metabolism, cellular signaling, and really whatever we're doing isn't going to land if our cellular membrane is not healthy. And we have some very big questions to ask, and just some very key information. We're not deficient in supplements, but we are biochemically out of balance, and specifically with our omega-6 to omega-3 ratio. And that imbalance, from what I'm understanding, is now affecting everything that we're doing. In fact, it also affects how peptides are even landing. And just by adding this one simple, affordable oil, which is mind blowing, can really change the game so very much. And so, with that being said, I do have a series of questions. I don't want to keep this a very long, it's, a basic set of questions, really, when it comes down to it, so that we can understand the fundamentals of the importance of the omega-6 to 3 ratio, how to fix it, why balance oil, and all the things. But I think some of the biggest questions, if you want to just kind of explain the importance of the omegas overall and getting our body back in balance for the first question.
I think that's a great place to start. And also just, anytime we bring out new words, new vocabulary words, it's kind of like our brain can get kind of stuck on something if we don't fully understand what it is. So I think it'd be good to really define a couple terms with some really easy analogies that everybody can understand. So I've been using peptides for several years now. They truly got me out of the gutter when I was bottomed out in my health from toxic mold poisoning. Literally went all over the world to different functional medicine doctors before I found someone who knew how to use the correct peptides to really jumpstart. It was literally like jumper cables on my body, is what it felt like. And I'm a huge believer in peptides. And when we think about peptides, they're signaling molecules, right? So if who was here back in the day like me when we had to dial up to send emails, you'd be like, and you'd have to press send, receive, I'm in my 50s. So, I was one of those that was here when the internet was invented. But, you know, peptides are kind of like the email. They are the messenger molecule, right? Now, our cells have to be able to send those messages and receive those messages in order for the peptides to do their job. So we can be shooting up all day long or swallowing pills, however you take them. But if your cell membrane is broken, those messages are not getting sent and they're not getting received. So that's why peptides don't work for certain people. It's not that they're not active, it's not that they're not working. It's that your cell membrane is broken. You're out of balance. Who loves creme brulee like me? If I'm ever going to eat sugar, I guarantee you it's going to either be in the form of cheesecake or a creme brulee. But I don't like the crusty stuff on the top. The crusty stuff, the crusty caramelized sugar is the part I honestly don't even like it. I like the creamy, yummy custard inside. But if you picture that crusty top that's on a creme brulee, that is what's happening to our cell membranes when we're eating omega-6 fats. So omega-6 fats are seed oils. Even if the bottle of salad dressing says organic on it, if it comes from a seed, soybean, canola, safflower, sunflower, all of those things that come from a seed, they're industrially processed. And in that process of refined, bleach, deodorizing, all those chemicals that take it from a healthy little plant oil, which seems like, oh, plant oil, plant oil, that must be healthy, right? It came from a plant. Well, not after it's been completely destroyed in an industrial processing plant. It's been refined, bleached, deodorized. All this chemical alteration oxidizes those omega-6 oils. So, and this is really important to differentiate because when those oils are in their native state, like a sprouted pumpkin seed, those oils are actually highly beneficial at transporting oxygen at the cellular level, blowing up cancer cells. They're really powerful for our immune system. So we're not saying that all omega-6 fats are bad. What we want people to be aware of is that our food supply that relies on industrially processed seed oils, which is in French fry fat, corn chips, Pop Tarts, granola bars, protein shakes, all these things that we throw in our diet, going, oh, yeah, let me optimize my protein. And we take some gimmicky thing from GNC that is masquerading as a health food, but it's actually undermining our health. So my whole career, I've been really passionate about helping people understand how their bodies work in just very easy to understand terms so that we all have access to live our best life and we just continue to increase our personal bests, right? So, as far as sending and receiving those messages, if you're someone who is not getting the optimal effect, or not the effect that you would see that other people are getting when you're using peptides, remember those messenger molecules, they are not landing, they are not getting inside the cell. So, cells, think back to high school biology class, cells are like a little ball, and inside is the engine, and the very middle is the nucleus, and it's the engine. Well, that little ball, if you picture like a little tennis ball, that outer sheath or that outer covering of that ball is the cell membrane. And that membrane is made up of fats. So if we're eating healthy fats like wild salmon, grass-fed beef, things that are high in omega-3 content, for the most part, are the highly anti-inflammatory fats. That means that our cell membrane, every single cell in the whole body, is going to be nice and fluid. Cell membrane fluidity is the nutrients and the oxygen can flow in and really power up that cell and act like those jumper cables, like reviving that cell, allowing it to be able to produce energy, to make ATP. Cellular waste is able to easily flow out. That's what happens when we have a good omega-3 to 6 balance. Omega-3s are anti-inflammatory and they allow that cell membrane to be fluid. So kind of like a piece of cheesecloth wrapped around that ball, the nutrients and the oxygen are going to get in, the cellular waste, is going to be able to flow out easily and get flushed out of the body really easily. To the contrary, if we're eating tortilla chips and granola bars and toaster pastries and crackers, anything, cereal, total breakfast cereal, breakfast to champions, right? Wrong. All of those, anything crunchy, crispy, shelf stable that has an oil in it, it's destroying your health. It's destroying your cell membrane health. It's making the outside shell of every cell in your body like the top of a creme brulee. It's making it crusted, oxidized. So when I say oxidized, picture when you cut into an apple. When you cut into an apple, it turns brown, it oxidizes. Just like when you take that blowtorch to make the creme brulee and the sugar goes from white to brown, oxidized, caramelized, it makes a hard coating. Nutrients are not flowing in. Oxygen cannot get in. Cells are starving to death at the cellular level. On top of that, you start restricting nutrients because you're like, I'm going to be the calorie crushing queen. And then your cells are really starving because they're not getting enough nutrients to stay alive. And they downshift into a lower gear as if you're a hibernating bear and you are hypometabolic. You have a suppressed metabolism with all of the best intentions to eat less and exercise more. But if you're just eating less calories and you're eating omega-6 fats because you're eating these processed health foods that are really not healthy, you've got to become a label reader and specifically look at the type of fat that you're eating, because our entire immune system rises and falls on the type of fats that we're eating. Our entire whole metabolic function, our mental health. When you think about it, the cell membrane, there's two things that to me that are really important besides just the basic common sense. Are we getting enough nutrients? It's like, are we getting enough protein? Are we getting enough healthy fats? Are we getting enough vitamins, minerals, antioxidants? There's certain baselines of health that our body needs to just have basic operation. But if you want to have a high functioning metabolism and have vital health, we don't do that by starving people, and we definitely don't do it by just giving less calories of nutritionally deficient foods that are highly inflammatory. And that's what most people do when they begin a weight loss program, because they just don't know better. So knowing that it is epidemic in America, that because of the processed seed oils that are in the American food supply, you really can't get away from them unless you're very intentional to avoid them. You even at Whole Foods, you think that anything on that salad bar would probably be a healthy option, right? Because it's grown without pesticides, it's grown without chemicals, it says it's organic. But you have to be a label reader, because even at places like that, all of those salad dressings and the mayonnaise and all of that, it's made from those highly processed highly inflammatory, highly oxidizing, cell suffocating seed oils. So if you picture that every single cell in your body is encrusted with the topping of a creme brulee, your cells are starving. And this is why we have no energy. This is why, even though we are exercising more and eating less, we aren't losing weight because our bodies are in a state of alarm. It's like somebody has pulled the fire alarm in our bodies, and we are full of inflammation. Every single cell makes up the organs. And if we have healthy cells, we have healthy organs, and we have a high functioning metabolism. So it's as easy as doing an oil change. So we are, every hour, billions of cells renew in our body. So, think about when you get a new kitchen sponge. I love it when I have a brand new sponge in my kitchen. I can wipe down the counters, just a little squirt of soap, and it is nice and clean. It gets everything nice and squeaky clean, right? Well, after you've used it for a while, the sponge starts to fray and little pieces of it start falling off and it starts wearing out and it starts getting clogged up. And God forbid you clean a seed oil pan with that thing. That thing is sucked up with oxidized, rancid fat. You can't even rinse that thing out. It just becomes so clogged up with that nasty oxidized fat. If you picture that our cells, every hour, billions of cells renew. When cells are beginning to get old, like that kitchen sponge, they become to get kind of ratty. They have pieces falling off. They're not like the whole shape. It's not the original recipe anymore. And if we don't have enough nutrients available and it's time for a cell to be turned over and replaced, our body will make shift. It'll make do with whatever food that we're giving it. Our bodies are highly adaptable. So if all we have is French fry fat that's highly oxidized, the body is going to make shift with whatever we're giving it. And it's going to take that oxidized inflammatory molecule and it's going to patch that hole in the cell membrane where it really wants to have an omega-3 fat to make a nice, fluid, soft, squishy cell membrane that nutrients can flow in and waste can flow out and just get flushed right out of the body. But if all we have is French fry fat, it's going to take that fat, that oxidized, sticky particle, and it's going to patch that hole when the old cells get flushed out, and it's just going to make do. So a lot of us have been making do our entire lives. And this is why we have kids that are getting diabetes and cancer, because the food supply has become so overrun with processed foods. I think, the generation of kids that are just becoming like in their 20s now, this is like the first generation of kids we have a lot of people that have grown up completely on fast food and microwaved meals out of the freezer. And that means all the cell membranes in their body need a lot of help. But the great news is, as quickly as your next meal, you can be improving the cellular health. And healthy cells make healthy organs, make a high functioning metabolism. So it takes this is why in medicine, we only do labs every 4 months, because every 4 months, enough of the red blood cells have been replaced in the blood supply. About 30% of the red blood cells have been replaced in 4 months. So every cycle of cell renewal, there's been enough replaced that it's worth it to check the blood again and see, has my input changed the shape of my cells, how my cells are behaving? Can they talk to each other? That cellular communication going on. And so every 4 months, so you can imagine after 4 cycles of cell renewal, or really 3 cycles of cell renewal, because every 4th month would be a full year. The 1-year mark of changing the oil in your diet is a very special mark for your immune system, for your mental health, and for your metabolic health, because it takes several cycles of cell renewal. We can see a difference clinically on our lab work when we check the blood after you've changed the oil in your diet. After 4 months, you'll be able to see an incredible improvement. A lot of people who are eating a healthier diet already will already be brought back into the healthy balance range, which would be no more than 3 omega-6s to 1 omega-3 in the blood sample. But a lot of people, I was just talking with a doctor that I work very closely with who does a lot of testing for me. And we were just saying, like, neither one of us has ever met a healthy vegetarian. And there is kind of this myth, no offense to any vegetarians who may be present, but there is kind of this sense of sacrifice and what am I, like deprivation and that goes along with healthy eating. And it's just so interesting that most of the vegan substitute proteins and things like that, they're loaded with omega-6 fats. And the people that we are seeing getting tested that eat the processed, meat substitutes, very high in omega-6 fats. Um, Pastured meat is very high. The grass-fed meat. We are what we ate. So if you're eating a cow that ate grass, that is going to be turned into omega-3 fat. It's actually going to be more anti-inflammatory than than farm-raised salmon. Because if you're eating salmon that is fed corn and soy and it's raised in a farm with antibiotics, the fat in that salmon is going to be highly inflammatory and it's going to be omega-6 dominant. It's not going to be a healthy piece of salmon. Only wild caught salmon, when they're out there eating algae and plankton and all the green things in the ocean, those wild caught fish are going to help your omega-3 ratio. So we've made it super easy for everybody, or I wish I could take credit for this one, but I had nothing to do with formulating the product that we're sharing about tonight, because this is like pressing the easy button to make the Mediterranean diet available and at your fingertips. Every bottle of oil is about the same as 30 servings of wild caught salmon and about 300 olives. So you're getting everything that you would need to just press the easy button to get the Mediterranean diet at your finger, or the effects of the Mediterranean diet at your fingertips. So what I found was so interesting is that when they did test this clinically in Europe, they didn't tell anybody to stop eating French fries. They didn't tell anybody to stop baking their cakes with, vegetable oils and whatever. All they did was add the oil. I was astounded because I've worked in nutritional medicine for 25 years. And I tell people, you got to get rid of this stuff. You got to learn how to shop healthier. You got to stop buying the chips that are fried in, organic canola oil or sunflower, safflower, any of that. You've got to get rid of those things. And when I work with cancer patients, I 100% tell them your life depends on this, on the type of oil that you're eating. And I've been working with cancer patients for over 20 years to create a bodily environment where cancer is challenged to survive. And the very first thing I change is what type of fats that people are eating. And it's so interesting to me because our bodies are kind of like computers. You change the input and the body just changes the output. It's very, very quick. That remodeling is very quick. So we can remodel our cell membranes as quickly as the next meal that we eat or taking a spoon of this oil. And I think I probably answered more than that whole question, the first question, but I want to make sure that we cover everything on your list. So let's go to the next one, Kim.
Thank you for that. That was so beneficial, so good. Perfect. I think one of the biggest things that we all are going to ask and everybody is going to be curious about is what makes balance oil so different from other things. I know, the brand ambassador from Nordic Naturals left Nordic Naturals because everybody failed the test miserably. And, I have friends that are like one in particular, even today said, well, I buy this one and it's this, and this. Now, what makes the balance oil so much more effective than anything else out there on the market?
Well, it's so interesting that you would say that because when I first heard about it, when I was first invited to even take a look at this brand, I was like, oh, really? Omega-3s? I mean, we've been telling people to get them from food, the best they can for a long time. And it really makes a difference. But when you're supplementing, it's a sticky wicket out there. I only use pharmaceutical grade nutritional supplements and formulate those and use them in my private practice. And of course, Nordic Naturals is a very well-known brand. It's not one that I would promote myself because the way that the oil is prepared has everything to do with whether or not it's going to give you energy or suck from your biological energy reserves. So Most of the fish oil out there is going to say, if it's tested for mercury, and metals and things like that. You've got fish oil that's made from cod, which is a really huge fish, which means it's eaten thousands or probably millions of other little fish. So the mercury and the contaminants that are in the ocean, they are bioaccumulating in the liver of that codfish by the time it's harvested to be able to get the oil out of that type of fish oil. It is loaded with all, PCBs and heavy metals and all kinds, plastics, everything that you don't want. So the oil has to be cleaned somehow. And there's different ways of cleaning the oil. There's an enzymatic process, which attracts. There's some places use like a clay that drags through the oil and it like magnetically attracts all of the metals and gets them out that way. Things that are distilled products, they change the molecular shape of the oil and it actually creates an electron imbalance, which means it takes electrons from our body when we try to digest that oil and it actually makes us more tired. So unless you're grounding yourself at the same time you're taking your fish oil, if you're using some of these mass produced brands, they might pass the heavy metal test and have, and they might actually be clean, but energetically speaking, are they going to resonate with your cells and be highly absorbable? Another problem we have with omega-3s is that they are very delicate. They have a very delicate chemical structure. So they can oxidize easily, even from the heat exchange just during the digestive process. If you're taking your omega-3 supplement along with a French fry, that French fry is going to act like a rebel gangster. Hardly ever do you have gangsters that turn into the good kids. Usually you have the good kids that are getting affected by the bad kids. And that's the way it is with oils in our stomach. If you take your fish oil and you're washing that down with French fries and a milkshake, that omega-3 oil is going to become oxidized because it's mixing in with all those other bad influences, the sugar, starch, the vegetable oils. And that omega-3 oil is going to become a destructive oil. And it's going to actually increase your cholesterol, your oxidized cholesterol. And you're going to be like, wait, I just spent $120 a month on this fish oil supplement. And now my cholesterol is getting even worse. How is that even a thing? It doesn't seem fair, but it happens all the time. And it's because there's not enough antioxidant force within most fish oils to protect it during the digestive process and to protect it from being converted into an inflammatory bad fat when it's mixed with all those other bad foods in the diet, sugar, starch, and vegetable oil, all the inflammatory things. So if you're just throwing down an omega-3 supplement and you haven't changed your diet and you're not being proactive to avoid the sugar, starch, and vegetable oil, your fish oil supplement is going to be turned against you. It is not going to do anything, and it's actually going to contribute to your inflammatory load because those threes are going to get destroyed and oxidized. So what's really, and then the other thing is a lot of people don't digest them, again, because of the way that the oils are prepared, and they aren't emulsified easily. So the thing that is really unique about this oil is that it has olive polyphenols from 2,500. This blows my mind that these olive trees are 2,500 years old. They were around when Jesus was walking on this earth. This olive grove in Spain, it blows my mind. But we know in science, I actually go visit grass-fed beef farms in Virginia where I live. There's like scientists from all over the world come to study the soil at this grass-fed beef farm because the beef are so healthy because the way they've cultivated the soil biome, the whole ecosystem within the soil contributes to the nutrient density of the meat because the cows are eating the grass, the whole thing. Anyway, when I heard about these olive trees that were old and more high in polyphenols than other young olive trees in other parts of the world, and they take these polyphenols, which are antioxidants, and they basically create a little wrapper around the fish particles. So this is more like, first of all, these are teeny tiny little fish. They're anchovies, little mackerel. They're teeny tiny fish. So they haven't eaten millions of other fish in their lifetime. They're just teeny fish. and they're basically pressed. So it's like a whole food preparation. And those fish particles are wrapped in these olive polyphenols. So one, what I find surprising is I don't even taste fish when I eat this oil. And I think it's because of the, really the olive taste. But that polyphenol wrapper makes a very special delivery system that makes it a lot more absorbable. It's coated in antioxidants, so it doesn't get oxidized and rancid during the digestive process. So that right there is what makes it stand alone. It's more digestible, and it has a lot more antioxidants to it than most fish oil, and it's protected. So it's able to get utilized, it's able to get delivered all the way, not just down your throat and in your stomach, but through that digestive exchange. There's a lot of heat, and that extra wrapper of polyphenols around it is what protects it. It's like the bouncer that delivers it all the way to the cell membrane so that it gets delivered intact and can do its job to increase that cell membrane fluidity and cellular messaging.
Thank you. I know I actually spoke with a couple people that have been on the oil and they have not changed their diets, even though they said they very much understand that they should, but that their omega-3 to 1 ratio was in balance just by using the balance oil and not changing anything. Can you talk a little bit about that and why um it's different than, you know, other fish oils obviously create the reaction that you were talking about, but not this one necessarily.
Yeah, it's always easier when we're trying to instill change. Like it's hard news when we learn we have to make changes because we're all creatures of habit, right? So if we can help people to say, oh, just add this one thing in instead of don't do your three favorite things anymore. Don't eat your three favorite foods anymore. It's very, very hard for people to have affect change in their life that's going to change their output when we're taking things away. So it's always more powerful when we add things. And because of the olive polyphenols that are wrapped around these fish oil particles, that is what makes them truly magical, more absorbable, more of a metabolic lift, and also just protects them from being damaged.
Thank you. One of the other questions that I had, and then maybe we could open up for questions that other people might have as well, but coming down to the testing of this, it's one thing to take a fish oil, but why is this testing so very important? Because when I learned about this oil from you, it almost sounded too good to be true, even though I know coming from you, it really is that good, which is why I jumped in head first with this, and I cannot wait to get the oil in my body. But to have, US dollars a kit that's only $115 that comes with a free bottle of oil. And then once you're on auto ship, it's only $45. I mean, that's one of the most affordable health products and seems like to be one of the best that we can be putting in our body for such an affordable cost. And then the fact that the company sends a test kit every 4 months for free. It's just a no-brainer, but can you talk about that test a little bit and why it's so key and what health markers and information people will gather from that test?
Yeah, absolutely. So you've touched on a couple things here, and, I totally agree with you. I am amazed at what an incredible value they've made this product available for. Behind me have a whole room full of supplements that I use, and I have a variety of different omega-3 products in stock. And I'm fascinated. I just did the blood spot test for a couple people, and I just completed. Um, this is what the test kit looks like. And I'm just going to show it real quickly because, our brains are curious little things. And once we see things, it's a lot easier to picture. So, you know, you get this little card, and each person, um, actually, I had it backward. No, I didn't. Okay. So it comes in this little card and it comes empty. I just did these with a couple patients. And then you slide it back in here, you tear this off, it has your ID number, and you send that back to the lab. So it's literally super fast. She comes with a little lancet, a little tiny band-aid, and a little alcohol prep pad. So it's just real quick, little finger prick. You let it dry, send it in the prepaid envelope. That's all there is to it. The testing, you'll get an entire panel of inflammatory markers back that are correlated to your risk factors for cardiac disease and other things that we normally don't like to think of. Like we nobody likes to get bad news, right? But to me, it's super empowering to be able to continually test because sometimes we start taking supplements and we just believe that they're going to be good for us. A lot of us have been taking fish oil for 25 years. And when we take this test, we go, oh, guess what? It wasn't really working. It didn't have enough antioxidants at the same time for it to get where it needed to go to do its job. And my cell membrane health is still dramatically out of balance, even though I've been teaching this. I've been teaching health recovery classes for 22 years, and so it's so empowering to be able to have direct access to put these test kits in the hands of people without having to make a doctor appointment. You can just provide these test kits and people can do it in the comfort of their own home and they can self-monitor themselves every 4 months. And again, if you stay on the auto ship to get your bottle of oil, not only is the oil discounted, but if you stay loyal to your own routine, every 4th month you get a test kit for free. So you can continue to monitor your health yourself without having to pay for an expensive functional medicine visit. As a doctor in private practice, I charge $500 an hour. And I know that there's a lot of people that can't afford my services. And the test kits that I sell, the blood spot test kits that I sell are $400 to $500. So this is unbelievable to me. I'm so excited to be able to help partner with this company to push this out, to make it accessible to the masses. So people who truly want to improve their best life, they want to live their best life. A lot of us think when we know better, we do better, right? Maya Angelou is one of my very favorite people. And I love her quotes. I haven't come across one that I didn't love, but I feel like everybody is doing the very best they can to live the best life that they know how. And this is such a simple thing that we can, and affordable for everyone. And when we teach people how to do better in this one way, it is so foundational to health throughout the body. If, the people that I just met with today are having follow-up visits with their cardiologist. It's someone who's been followed for 12 years after having had a heart attack, and their cardiologist is doing all of their blood work tomorrow of all the markers that they check. And I said, well, let's check your blood right now so we have a side by side. So when the test kit comes back, it's going to show us his risk factor for heart disease and possible, a possible reoccurrence of a heart attack. So yeah, the test is really, I think, just such an empowering tool. And I've done test-based nutrition my entire practice. I do only individualized testing. And I might have, 10 different brands of vitamin D, and I'm checking the delivery form and which type of vitamin D is going to resonate best with each person, but it's not available for the masses. And what I love about this is that anyone who wants to share with 4 friends can get their products for free in this way. And it truly, I feel like since COVID, we've had a global health crisis, and there has never been a time in human history where we've needed help to reverse inflammation on a grand scale. And without having to go to a doctor's office, we're empowering people to be able to take charge of their own health and self-monitor themselves with just a stamp, just test yourself and send it off in the mail. And to me, this is super, super exciting because instead of me being able to meet with 40 people a week, we can together help 4,000 people a week. And I get excited about that. I get excited about helping people to be able to have, take back autonomy and take charge of their health. We all have issues come up kind of unexpected, and being able to provide test kits that give you an inflammatory barometer of how well you're doing Most people will get within the 10 to 1 range within the first test. And because we do dose this by weight, if you're wondering how much you should take, it does say it on the bottle, but if you multiply your weight by 0.0136, that is the exact amount of teaspoons that you should take. You can round up a little bit if you want to. It comes out to about 2 teaspoons for about 150-pound person. Just so you have, a gauge of what you would be doing. And I recommend people start taking it like half the dose in the morning and half the dose maybe with lunch, because it will help to rev up your metabolism. Oil is extremely stimulating to the metabolism, and this one is going to really light that, jumpstart that metabolic fire and help to push the cellular remodeling faster. So when we have, think about like a factory, when we have more supplies coming down the line, it will rev up the cellular metabolism. If the cells know that there's plenty of nutrients available, it's going to increase the cell turnover faster, and you're going to get better results faster. Did you want to talk about that? Just reminded me the other day, Kim, when we were talking about fat burning and exercise and when people are deficient in omega-3s. Do you want to
How
talk
did you
about
know that
that?
that was my next question?
Because we're vibing, girl. We're vibing.
Yes, go with it. I love it.
Okay. So, and again, I love the fact that we have this whole brand new omega-3, and because it is wrapped in this polyphenol extract, it's like a whole new superpower that we haven't had for the 20 years I've been teaching this in my weight loss classes and my lifestyle transformation classes. But I would always ask at the beginning. I've been doing 3-month transformation classes for 20 years. And at the beginning, I would give people the option, like you can just eat the diet, you can drink the water, you can check off the boxes that you've taken your basic supplements. But if you really want to ramp up your fat burning results, you have the option to add in a fish oil, different brand. But this has been part of my foundational nutrient plan for over 20 years. Something that's really interesting about how the body works is when we become insulin resistant. And since COVID, because COVID destroys the gut lining, dumps toxins like endotoxemia is a thing, lipopolysaccharides, bacteria, all food particles, all kinds of stuff ends up in the blood that we don't want. And of course, it gets dumped right into the liver, our number one filtration organ. Liver enzymes go up, we start getting more and more insulin resistant because of the toxins and things in the blood that don't belong. It's not because we may be eating the wrong things. And some people they are. Some people are driving through the drive-through 3 times a day and all they're eating is seed oils and sugary ketchup and whatever. If that's you, you know better. You didn't need me to tell you that fast food was unhealthy. But since COVID, we have an epidemic of people getting insulin resistant. And it's because of the damage to the gut lining and the metabolic insult, the changes to the liver that happen from the aftermath of COVID causing gut damage. So we have lots and lots of people, more than ever, that are becoming more and more insulin resistant and creeping more towards type 2 diabetes. This is why peptides are so powerful in our society right now, because it really rights the wrong, as far as I'm concerned, of that whole situation that changed us as a human race metabolically. COVID changed us. And the whole peptides are really the ability to right that wrong, as far as I'm concerned. We could talk for days about all the different ones and all of that. But when it comes to foundational nutrition, the more insulin resistant we get, the less we are able to burn fat for fuel. And if you already are diabetic or your hemoglobin A1C is getting higher, or if you just are starting to have resistant fat loss, maybe you haven't been to a doctor, so you don't know what your numbers are. You don't know on paper what your blood work looks like, but you just know my body doesn't work the way that it used to. I've got a little bit more weight around the middle than I ever had before. When your waist starts to become bigger than your hips, that's a sign that you're insulin resistant. If your blood pressure is starting to go up, that's a sign that you're becoming insulin resistant. So there's a lot of little clues that our body's giving us that insulin resistance is happening. So in a healthy body that is capable of fat burning, our muscles have these things called neurofibrils, and it's like an electrical plug, just like you plug in your blender to make it work and you get juice from the electrical socket to make your blender work. Our muscles have these neurofibrils that plug into our fat so we can burn fat for energy when we exercise, when we go for a walk, whatever. People who are insulin resistant, that oxidized oxidation process that we were talking about before, like the top of a creme brulee, that process starts eating away at those neurofibrils. So those electrical plugs start getting shorter and shorter and shorter, and they just disintegrate when we're insulin resistant. So when we go for a walk, if we're insulin resistant, this is why when people just eat less and exercise more and they get stuck in having weight loss plateaus, it's because when you've had that internal chemistry shift in your body and now you're insulin resistant, you don't have those electrical plugs plugged into your fat to burn for fuel when you exercise. And it's because of the omega-3 deficiency that those neurofibrils will disconnect from the fat. And the muscle, you might be working that muscle, but it's not plugged in, it's not tapping into your fat to burn that fat for fuel when you work out. So, who wants to exercise for 6 weeks before those neurofibrils start to grow back? And then it takes another few weeks for them to grow back, but exercise can stimulate the regrowth of those neurofibrils, but it takes 6 weeks of consistent daily exercise for those neurofibrils to start growing back so that they can plug into the fat so that when you're exercising, you are burning your fat for fuel. So who would like to work out for 6 weeks before you can tap into your fat stores? Usually no one. I don't see any hands going up typically. When you start taking an omega-3 supplement, those neurofibrils start growing back within 24 hours. And typically if you're taking it consistently, if you have a delivery form like this one that's safe, that has enough antioxidants for it to survive the digestive process, those neurofibrils are starting to grow back with your very first dose within your first 24 hours. And within 3 days, those neurofibrils are growing and they're plugging back into your fat. So, would you like to work out consistently and take a supplement and know that by day 5, you're burning fat when you go for a walk? Those neurofibrils are plugged back into the source and you're burning fat. Or would you like to just skip out on that and go the hard route, which means you're burning no fat for 6 weeks before they start to grow back? And you have inflammation going on throughout your body. So, truly, this is something that to me is just a very foundational. Are we getting enough protein? Are we getting enough calories so that we're not in a hypometabolic hibernation state? But what types of fat are we eating? Are we getting fats that are remodeling that cell membrane that increase, that like every time we take it, it's like pressing send receive on the old fashioned email so that those messages are getting through, from one cell to another. Because if our cell membranes are crusted over with oxidized omega-6 fats, the messages are not getting sent. And your brain can be telling your body to burn fat, but that message isn't going anywhere. And it's because the cell membrane is out of balance. That 6:3 ratio is out of balance. And I hope that this is an empowering message for you guys to feel empowered, that you can make this simple change. Just change the type of, I love to say, is it time for an oil change? Because most of the times people at this point will go, oh yeah, I think I could add that one thing and get my entire body communicating, every cell in the whole body, talking to each other, increasing metabolism, reducing inflammation throughout the whole body. Because again, every single cell has a membrane on it, and healthy cells make healthy organs, and that makes a healthy, high functioning metabolism.
Thank you so much, Dr. Marlisa. I'm sure you pretty much covered all the ground that I know I have wanted to. I'm just going to say a bit just to close this out before we can open up for questions. But, tonight isn't really about adding in another supplement or wanting you to buy something, but more or less learning your numbers. And when you become more informed about your health, you can make better decisions. And, you know, when you can make better decisions, your overall health and wellness is going to improve. And I know for me, when I learned about this, like I said before, I wanted it yesterday. And so now the fact that it's in my home and I can take my test and send it off to the lab in Norway and get the results, you know, I'm anxious to see, because we all want to think that we're doing things very well and clean. And, you know, oftentimes, like I look, even just what I've experienced, my own personal health and perimenopause and the weight gain that has come. And, you know, I know insulin resistance sets in. And so I'm seeing changes happening with the peptides, but now I'm more excited to add this in because of how much more effective it is going to make everything else work in the body. So with that being said, I appreciate you. I appreciate your time. I know that everybody is probably blown away and wants the oil yesterday too. So obviously there's somebody who invited you onto this call, so you would want to reach out to them. I'm going to go ahead and stop the recording, and then I'll open it up for questions if you are available for a few.
Yes. I forgot to close the loop on one thing I started talking about at the beginning. And that is people who have avoided fat like the plague, like, you know, in the 80s, that was, you know, I think everyone was on a fat-free diet for the longest time. And what happens when we aren't eating a lot of healthy fats is, again, we go into a lower metabolism. Our organs shift into a lower level of function. So when you first start adding in a fat supplement, you need to give your body time, and our bodies miraculously adapt. But it does take about 10 to 14 days. If you're someone who's been on a low fat or a fat-free diet, you do want to take your daily dose and divide it up into just a little bit with each time you have a meal or a snack. Because within 10 to 14 days of that consistent daily dosing, our amazingly smart bodies, which were created to heal themselves, will start producing more lipase. So whatever we eat today, our body's going to be triggered to produce the dietary requirements, like the enough lipase or fat digesting enzymes tomorrow. So consistency is key. Instead of just taking 2 teaspoons right off the spoon altogether, that's a lot for your body to try to digest all at one time if you've been on a fat-free diet. So in order for you to have the very best results and also a really nice, even energy level, I'm very cautious when I implement intermittent fasting with my patients. I only do it specifically under supervision, but there is such a thing called a fat fast. If you really want to activate autophagy and not take more than 50 calories worth of fat at a time, you can do a fat fast where you take a half a teaspoon every hour with a glass of water. People who are super sick with autoimmune issues, cancer, all kinds of things, will opt to do that to really get a jump start. But I just wanted to put it out there. Make sure you're consistent daily dosing, and that if it's your first 2 weeks, you're going to break it up into tiny amounts. If you have 2 teaspoons, maybe take a half teaspoon with each meal, because you want to just give your gallbladder just a tiny little job, because you just want to make sure that you are digesting it thoroughly. If you take a whole bunch of fat at one time, it's going to stimulate the release of bile in the liver. Bile is like our little dishwasher pod, and it is a laxative. So if you take a lot of oil at one time and then the bile is squirted out and released, it's going to have a laxative effect, and you're going to think, oh, this is not for me. So I just want to make sure that when we have people who are new, especially if you've been eating a fat-free diet, your pancreas is going to need that oil coming in very small doses consistently every day. And by about 14 days in, your body will have kicked into high production of lipase. You'll have all the digestive enzymes that you need, and you'll be able to digest it perfectly.
Thank
Thanks for
you.
saying that, Marlisa, because I'm on a microdose of tirzepatide, and because I'm a larger individual, I had a larger amount of oil to take, and I didn't have that particular effect, but it was the nausea was just really bad. And I'm like, oh, I don't know if I can keep doing this. So thank you for that, splitting it up, especially for those of us on the GLP-1 too as well.
Yes. And if you are on a GLP-1, You are going to be more prone to nausea with any kind of fat. Like it just kind of changes the brain signaling and stuff. So another product that I use quite a bit that you can probably find on Amazon or someplace is called Lipo Optimize. And it's specifically a fat digesting enzyme. So you want to take that 30 minutes before your meal to prevent nausea, 30 minutes before your supplement. You can take it on an empty stomach if you have had heart issues and you know that you have arterial plaque buildup. If you take it on an empty stomach, it goes through your vasculature like Pac-Man and eats up the plaque that's lining the arteries. So when you take it with food, it digests the food. When you take it without food, it digests all the old plaque that is clogging up the arteries. So it's a win all the way around.
That is so cool. Thank you. And
Thank
one more
you.
thing that somebody told me recently, any issue that you have, if you go to Chat GPT and you say, how will improved omega-3 to 6 ratios benefit people with, and then fill in the blank, autism, autoimmune, infertility, cancer, Lyme, ADHD, you are going to find so much information. And one of the things that I have been looking into recently, because COVID really decimates something called the endothelial glycocalyx. And that is, it's not to get too deep or too crazy, but it's basically this like really thin gel protective coating that's in like all of your blood vessels. And it helps all your blood flow smoothly. And I had a really good
Without
friend,
sticking.
very young, exactly, got this clotting disorder. And I was like trying to help her. I'm like, oh my gosh, like, why do you have this clotting disorder? Well, COVID is decimating the endothelial glycocalyx. And that's why you're hearing about a lot of these young people getting blood clots and heart issues, right? It's beyond what is that called? It's not cardiomyopathy. What is that what it is? The
Oh,
that a lot of people are getting nowadays.
oh
Myocarditis.
yeah, cardiomyopathy.
Myocarditis. Thank you. Yeah. So it's something
Oh,
other than that, but it also lends to that. But anyway, um, when you have the right omega-3 to 6 ratio, it's going to help all of that. It's going to restore that glycocalyx. It's going to help your blood vessels have more nitric oxide. It's going to help you with better circulation, less stress on the heart, less plaque buildup, less clotting. I mean, almost eliminating like clotting issues. I'm not saying go off any medications or anything, but there's just so much good that is happening here. It's really incredible. And when people understand the importance of the omega-3 to 6 ratio, or at this company, they actually say 6-3 ratio, which took me a minute to like flop my head on that. But once you start understanding all those benefits, you're going to help so many people.
absolutely. Yeah. Another thing that helps to restore that glycocalyx is red light, that natural morning, first morning light, the first hour after sunrise, getting 20 to 30 minutes. It is free red light therapy and it helps to restore that glycocalyx, which makes that slippery coating on the inside of all of our blood vessels so that blood doesn't start clotting where it shouldn't or start sticking to the lining of the walls. Everything's flowing nice and smoothly. And also PEMF therapy, if you have access to that, that's also another thing that really helps to reverse the damage from COVID really quickly. Do we have any other questions?
Oh my gosh, don't be shy. Don't be shy, you guys. Ask